You might think that the mother of English cooking is Mrs. Beeton, but I have news for you. The lady who revolutionised the way we eat lived 100 years earlier and is now almost completely forgotten. Her name was Hannah Glasse. Queen of the dinner party, mother of the aspirational middle classes in the mid-18th century, founder of a revolution of cookery book writing. She was the most important person you should ever know about in cooking terms. And I'm going to tell you all about her. This is a typical table as it would have been laid for the rich, the aristocracy of the early 18th century. It's complicated food, it's chef's food, made by the foreign chefs that only the very rich would have had. And indeed, cookery books in those days were written by chefs for chefs.
All right, we have a very expensive bread for only the exclusive. Watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some of this, a little of that. Plenty of this, but not too much. The most expensive produce, always the best. If you're going to throw away your money, throw it into your stomach. Et voila, on the top. Look at that.
No simple household cook could have understood them, and I think that was the point of them. And here you have your hothouse fruits, you have pheasants from the estate, you have a complicated piece of patisserie, you've got chickens stuffed with all sorts of glorious things. And this, well, this delicious thing is a forced tongue. Delicious, but complicated to prepare. The poor, on the other hand, would have eaten really boring food. Depending on how much money you had less or more of it, but it would have been boring. Frumenty, or gruel, was what most people sat down to eat. The commoners also ate bread, plain pudding and salt beef. Because water wasn't safe to drink, men, women and even children drank beer. For them, food was fuel. It was about sustenance, not pleasure. So proletarian cooking was a world away from the excesses of the upper classes, and there was nothing in between. But in Georgian times, England was changing rapidly. Centuries-old divisions were shifting, and a new social class emerged, the urban middle class. With the rise of trade and advances in farming, the economy booms, so towns and cities expand at a dramatic pace. People flood from the countryside to London in search of better paid jobs. The streets crowd with shopkeepers, lawyers, bankers and architects. They drive the economy and set Britain on the road to industrialisation. They are almost universally literate and eager to learn and better themselves. This is the country that Hannah Glasse is born into, and these social changes paved the way to her revolution. Now who, you will want to ask, was Hannah Glasse? Well, she was born in 1708, the illegitimate daughter of a Northumbrian squire, and she was raised by the family in Northumbria until her stepmother died when she was really still quite young. It was not uncommon in those days to raise illegitimate children with the family, so she knew about luxury, she knew about servants, she knew about good food. But probably she may have felt that she didn't really belong. When she was 16, Hannah's stepmother died, and she sent to London to live with her grandmother. She must have hated it, because not long afterwards she runs away with a much older army lieutenant, a soldier of fortune perhaps. And that's when her troubles really began. Forever trying to make ends meet, looking for new ways to make money, to stay in touch with the social class to which she was born. Borough Market, where the women of the middle class would have come for their shopping in the mid-18th century. They had more money available to them, they wanted to be more upmarket, they wanted to have better entertainment, dinner parties. Dinner parties were the one way that they could really get up socially in the world, build up their husbands' businesses, but they didn't know how to do it. They aspire to eat, drink and entertain like the nobility. They buy the latest trends in fashion and tableware. They try hard to keep up with the Joneses. But they can't cook. Their cooks didn't know how to do it, they couldn't afford to have cooks who knew how to do it, and there was no way for them to turn. They were desperate, no answer, no light in the darkness. But in comes Hannah Glasse. She knows about all these problems. She lives in London, she's a sophisticate. She grew up in a better class with servants and luxury food and all sorts of entertaining. Hannah Glasse is in a unique position to teach the professional classes about fine dining. What is more, having fallen on hard times, she is aware of the practical needs and constraints of a middle-class woman's kitchen. She sees the gap in the market and quickly acts on it. She writes a book that is to remain the best-selling cookery book for 125 years.
The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy. I believe I have attempted a branch of cookery which nobody has yet thought worth their while to write upon. And I dare say that every servant who can but read will be capable of making a tolerable good cook. And those who have the least notion of cookery cannot miss of being a very good one.
When she writes The Art of Cookery in 1747, Hannah is 39. She has struggled financially for years because of her husband's hopeless spending. She's had 11 children, but only 5 survive. But now, her luck is about to change. Her cookery book sells like hotcakes. It's reprinted 33 times in 50 years and turns Hannah into the first celebrity cookery writer. The book makes her wealthy. She educates her boys at Westminster and Eton. Finally, she can afford the lifestyle she's always wanted. So, what is it that makes Hannah Glasse's recipes so revolutionary, so interesting, so unique? There's only one way to find out, isn't there? And that's to cook them. Hannah Glasse's book is often referred to as First Catch Your Hare, because in a recipe for hare she told readers to take your hare when it is catched, as it would have been, of course, by dogs in those days. Today, it's quite difficult to find a hare in your local supermarket, I'm very well too.
But I know how to catch one.
I tell you what I'm after. I'm looking for a hare. You don't have one knocking about somewhere, do you?
Yes, we have one here.
Excellent. Oh, that's a nice looking hare.
It is. You like it skinned or...
Why not
Oh,
treat
unskin,
myself?
yes. Thomas, can you skin this hare for me, please?
No problem. We mustn't forget hare is a vermin. They eat pounds of vegetation a week, and farmers are glad to see the back of them.
We've got a Herdwick mutton pie with a hint of mince.
Mutton! While hare is wild and available all year, until the 18th century, farmed animals have to be killed and preserved in salt for the winter, as there is nothing to feed them on. But then the turnip arrived. Thanks to this most humble of roots, animals can be fed through the winter, making fresh meat available all year round. Starvation was less of a threat, and eating could become a pleasure.
There we go, Robert.
By gum, that's a big fella. Wonderful, wonderful.
Brilliant. Lovely
I'll
hare.
just wrap him up, make sure he doesn't get away.
Fresh vegetables were also more readily available, thanks to new toll roads and canals.
Brilliant. Okay.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Lovely. Overseas trade was expanding rapidly. New tastes and flavours arrived from around the world. Conditions were ripe for a revolution in the kitchen. But what sort of kitchen was it? Well, here we are. An 18th century kitchen. Hannah Glasse's kitchen. What have we got and what haven't we got? First of all, no running water. If you were lucky, you had a pump in the kitchen rather than in the yard, and the pump was intermittent. We don't have an oven, we don't have a grill, we certainly don't have a microwave, no gas, no electricity, only a burning fire. And Hannah Glasse had a finger on all this, and she also knew the shortcomings of the domestic servants. The cook would probably have a limited repertoire of rather ordinary dishes, and recipe books were vague and hard to follow. Not with Hannah Glasse. She tells you exactly, step by step, what you're going to do, and she is the first person in cookery writing ever to do this.
My intention is to instruct the lower sort, and therefore I must treat them in their own way. For example, when I bid them lard a large fowl, if I should bid them lard with large lardoons, they would not know what I meant. But when I say they should lard with little pieces of bacon, then they know what I mean.
So here we have our hare, and what she's done is she's paunched it, and she's stuffed it. And again, the stuffing is so foolproof. She says, take as much time as will cover a sixpence. You know, they didn't have measures and teaspoons and tablespoons in those days. So she's come up with this idea, and even the stupidest cook couldn't really go wrong with that. And she's got parsley and lemon peel, and of course, that staple of the 18th century kitchen, the anchovy. It was very much a flavour of the day. And she mixed it all together, and she stuffed it into the hare, and then how is she going to cook it? The only thing she had was a spit, and this is the spit. And I'm going to impale the hare on the spit, which is not something I'm in the habit of doing. So you impale your hare carefully through the middle, using quite a lot of pressure. Until it comes out the other end. Now in Georgian times, you would of course have left the head on the hare, so that would have kept it on the spit better. How different this is from the complicated aristocratic recipes of the super rich. You know, this is not a French recipe, this is in a way a simple country dish which has been lifted for the aspirant middle classes by the interesting stuffing. It isn't just make-do food. Her simplicity starts a new tradition in cooking. And now I'm going to baste it. And even here, you see, Hannah Glasse was clever. There were no clocks in 18th century kitchens. And so what did she do? She defined the amount of liquid, milk and butter mixed, that you were to use for your basting.
Put 2 quarts of milk and ½ pound of butter into the pan. Keep basting it all the while it is roasting with the butter and milk until the whole is used, and your hare will be enough.
Hannah Glasse is trying to define the cooking time as simply as possible. Given that the baste dries out every 10 minutes or so, by the time all the baste has been used, the hare is cooked through. So simple, so clever. Again, not the stupidest cook could really mix that up. And you think that I'm going to have to stand and turn this, but you'll be wrong, because in this kitchen, high Georgian technology. This is a clock jack. It works by turning the handle, which lifts the weight, and then you turn the wheel, and it turns the spit. Terribly simple technical invention of the mid-Georgian kitchen. After this, they tried to get more complicated, and as always happens, they didn't work nearly as well. Besides devising simple and clear recipes, Hannah Glasse also makes sure that her recipes can be made for pennies and not pounds.
If gentlemen will have French cooks, they must pay for French tricks. A Frenchman in his own country will prepare a fine dinner of 20 dishes, and all genteel and pretty, for the expense he would put to an English lord for dressing one dish.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, watch this. I'm going to make my special secret recipe. Pain. Voila. We're going to knead the dough. I make a hole in it with my fist. Watch this. I'm going to put in the secret ingredient. Just a touch like this. I turn it in.
Unlike the titled gentry, the professional middle classes have to work to earn their money, so they disapprove of the extravaganzas cooked by French chefs for the upper classes.
So much is the blind folly of our times that they would rather be imposed upon by a French booby than encourage a good English cook.
It's beautiful, huh? Don't forget the flour, huh? Wonderful.
And now I'm going to make a syllabub. I have here some cider into which I grated some nutmeg and put in some sugar. This is what sugar used to look like, so you had to cut it off with a rasp. And now I need a secret ingredient which I'm not going to find in this kitchen. And somewhere in here I'm going to find my ingredient. Something that every rural and suburban 18th century house would have had. None of your pasteurisation nonsense or delivery to the door, straight from the cow. Good morning. Hello, Clover. For a syllabub, the old-fashioned way, you milk it straight from the cow into the jug. And the great advantage of this, of course, is that the milk comes out under pressure and it makes it all froth up for you without having to beat it too enthusiastically. Syllabub the old-fashioned way, and of course, Hannah Glasse, ever attentive to her audience, simplified this recipe, cut down the ingredients by about half, and although, unlike today, every member of your middle class would have known how to milk a cow, she made provision for an alternative.
You may make this syllabub at home, only have new milk and make it as hot as milk from the cow, and out of a teapot or any such thing, pour it in, holding your hand very high.
So in order to finish my syllabub, I'm now going to take this mixture of milk straight from the cow and cider and mace and sugar and pour it into half a pint of whipped double cream. And then stir it all together so that it blends beautifully. Syllabub is an English dessert dating from medieval times, but this version with whipped cream only became popular in Hannah Glasse's day. Just think about it. By the end of the 18th century, dinner parties were one of the most popular forms of entertainment, along with fornication and gambling, and at least that part of it was given to us by Hannah Glasse. Hasn't this hair turned out well? Sensational. Oh, lucky aspirational middle classes to think that you had Hannah Glasse to teach you how to have your dinner parties. So here you have it. Enjoy it. By writing budget-conscious, clearly explained recipes, Hannah Glasse does more than teach her readers how to cook. She gives the London housewife the ticket to sophistication and style. Her recipes are so fail-safe that not only does the mistress of the house learn to cook, she's able to give the book to the servants, confident that the results will make an impression. So Hannah Glasse takes the middle-class lady out of the kitchen and for the first time into a respectable position of supervision and leisure.
The art of cookery, made plain and easy.
Much like cookbooks today, the art of cookery became the guide to a lifestyle well beyond their everyday horizons. As the middle class continues to expand, Hannah taps into yet more publishing opportunities. She writes 2 more books for household management, The Complete Confectioner and The Servant's Directory. With every book, she bypasses the publisher and his hefty commission by using a technique called subscription publishing, where customers are asked to pay in advance and in return have their names printed in the published work. This means Hannah Glasse retains control of her copyright and every penny the book generates. Hannah Glasse is not only a savvy businesswoman and a trailblazer in the kitchen, she is also a pioneer in a wider movement that sees women begin to publish books in significant numbers for the first time. The art of cookery starts a revolution in cookery book writing. Her accessible style is emulated by most cooks after her, including Mrs. Beeton. Complicated books written by men become a thing of the past. A few questions remain to be answered. Will Hannah Glasse's recipes stand the test of time? Will they be cookable in a modern kitchen? And will they meet the needs of the taste buds of the modern foodie? I've invited a few guests to taste Hannah Glasse's most influential recipe. Curry. Hannah Glasse published the first ever recipe for curry. Now, what do I have to do?
To make a curry the Indian way, take 2 fowls or rabbits, cut them into small pieces, and 3 or 4 small onions peeled and chopped very small. Brown some coriander seeds in a clean shovel over the fire.
What is interesting is that Hannah Glasse knew that she was to roast them, because recipes earlier than her just talk about pounding spices, they don't talk about roasting them. And of course the whole point of roasting is that it really brings out the flavour of the spice. After a while it starts popping, and then you know it's done.
30 black peppercorns.
And now I put the peppercorns in with the coriander.
And beat them to a powder.
One of the advantages of being my weight is it makes life so much easier when it comes to pounding. In my youth, I used to get rugby forwards to do it for me.
Take a teaspoonful of salt and mix all well together with the meat.
This is a dry marinade. Between Hannah Glasse and the 20th century, people added a lot more spices to their curry.
Then put all together in a saucepan or stew pan with a pint of water and a large spoonful of rice.
Now, what's really interesting here is that she says just 1 large spoonful of rice. So clearly the rice is acting as a thickener of sorts rather than just curry and rice.
Allow to stew softly until the meat is enough.
Hannah Glasse often uses the phrase until the meat is enough, which means until the meat is tender, which it is.
Then take a piece of fresh butter about as big as a walnut.
Which is such a good description. Again, it's back to her being simple for the domestic cook. And put it in.
You are to observe that the sauce must be pretty thick.
Yes, yes, it will be thick.
And when the sauce is smooth and of a fine thickness, dish it up and send it to table.
Right, do begin. Someone like to pour some wine. Yes, absolutely. Now that was very easy to cook. I just hope it tastes nice. It looks rather anemic. I'm serving it with a ragout of cucumbers, another of Hannah Glasse's recipes. Good, do begin. And I'd love to know what you think. My 3 guests are not just foodies. All writers on the history of food, they have a deep and passionate interest in it. They certainly won't be easy to please. So what do you think of the curry?
One of the things that's so different from our own present cooking is how pale and white it is. You know, it looks sort of like chicken tarragon or something, doesn't it?
You know, if one thinks curry, one thinks vindaloo, doesn't one? And this is about as far from a vindaloo as you could possibly get. It's very delicate and, you know, lovely flavour, but not at all heavily spiced.
It is just coriander and pepper, isn't it?
That's right.
Which tastes really clean and pure. I actually really like that pared down spicing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a curry.
It's not really a
as such.
curry, no. It's not. I mean, the pepper gives it a little bit of heat, doesn't it? But the fact it hasn't got any chilli or cayenne.
It is only 200 years after the chili was introduced in the first place to India. And
really, chili's only made it to the south of India
and
for a
only
long
to the south
time,
of India.
didn't
And
they?
so the time we're talking about, it's entirely possible that there weren't chilies in the British parts of India.
I wonder where she would have got it from. I mean, what would her sources have been?
She had a son who was in Bombay, I would assume with the East India Company, and he must have written back to her. By the 4th edition, she's added turmeric and ginger, and not chilli, but one or two other spices. So obviously he must have kept writing.
Well, it's interesting because the spices would have been available. It's not as though she wouldn't have been able to get turmeric or ginger. I mean, they'd been around for centuries if you had the money to buy them.
It fits with her very pared down style of cookery, doesn't it? Because you can really taste the few ingredients that are there. They really sing out because there are so few of them.
To me, I think that Hannah Glasse's really seminal influence was the writing of simple recipes.
But I think in some ways this does taste more. I mean, it tastes. I wouldn't be completely surprised if I was served this by a friend of mine if they were a very good cook. It's just. I mean, it's
Happy.
intolerant to.
Well, it looks like Hannah Glasse has passed the foodie test. So let me tell you the end of her story. With the money from the book, Hannah buys a costumier in Tavistock Street, and he's very successful. She sells clothes to the gentry and is described as habit maker to the Princess of Wales. Everything looks really well set, but then something goes horribly wrong. Hannah Glasse ran up the most enormous debts. We shall never know whether it was her husband's gambling debt she inherited or whether she just lived so far beyond her means that she couldn't keep up. In any event, she had to sell the copyright of her book and she went bankrupt. And in those days, bankruptcy and debt meant jail. And so the woman who gave the world fine dining finished a miserable prisoner on gruel. And that's the last we ever heard of Hannah Glasse. The mother of the dinner party died in 1770 at the age of 62. This tragic ending may explain her absence from the history books, but her work outlives her and is still manifested in the popularity of no-frills cooking today. Delia Smith may be doing her best to make good food accessible, but this is where it all began.
Pain de l'argent.